Hello, all. We are going to be doing Bible study in 5 minutes. Grab your Bibles. We are at 1 Samuel chapter 11. Please join me and my rather rotund cat, Humphrey. Hi, buddy. As we go through a very exciting chapter of the Bible. Please join us. I'll see you guys in 5 minutes. Hello, Cassandra. How are
Hello.
you?
Good, good.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Oh, your
I'm,
beard's
I'm,
almost back.
what'd you say?
Your hair is almost back.
Yeah. Two weeks. It's been 2 weeks. This is what this looks like. I feel naked without it. It's very, very strange. It doesn't feel right.
It was not very off-putting, but it was different.
I accept that. Look, it was very off-putting to my wife. My wife was like, "Why? Why did you do this?" And it was because of her. But every single day, she was just like, "Who are you?" And then would just randomly say, "You can't be trusted." She'd just throw that at me every now and then.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny because when you first shaved, you did remind me of a podcaster that I used to watch that I stopped watching because he had this whole incident where he cheated on his wife. I thought that was very. You looked weirdly like him when you were
Not
shaved.
I, not I promise.
No.
It's interesting. I want to know what this person looks like, Cassandra, because people will be like, "Oh, you look exactly like this guy," and then they send me a picture of someone, and I'm just like, I don't
No.
understand. Sometimes it's just anyone with a beard. So someone said I looked like Charles Manson, and I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, you both have beards." And I was like, "What?" Okay.
I mean, people always tell me I look exactly like my mom, and I always thought that was not true. Or my sister too. I think we all look really different.
Yeah. It's my niece finds it difficult or found it difficult when I first came over and she was like meeting me and listening to me talk. She found it very difficult because I'm not her dad, but we speak in a similar way. And she was just like, "What is going on? This is the strangest thing. Why is there another one
A
that doesn't look
doppelganger.
anything like him?" Yeah.
Yeah, it's weirder when it happens in public. I've ran into people that I thought was like a friend of mine, and they obviously didn't know who I am. But it took me a few minutes to catch up.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to be going into First Samuel chapter 11. I'm so excited to be doing this one because this one makes me all giddy. Because the Hebrew symbolism, it's one of those things that if you know just the slightest amount of Hebrew, you're going to go, "Ooh!" And it's something that is not caught in the English at all. And it is very exciting to me. Can you give me one moment? Can you read this section yourself? I have to go off camera for 1 second.
Oh, okay, perfect. Then Nahash the Ammonite went up and besieged Jabesh Gilead, and all the men of Jabesh said to Nahash, "Make a treaty with us, and we will serve you." But Nahash the Ammonite said to them, "On this condition I will make a treaty with you, that I gouge out all of your right eyes, and thus bring disgrace on all Israel." The elders of Jabesh said to him, "Give us 7 days' respite, that we may send messengers through all the territory of Israel. Then, if there is no one to save us, we will give ourselves up to you." When the messengers came to Gibeah of Saul, they reported the matter in the ears of the people, and all the people wept aloud. Now, this is awkward being on here by myself. I thought it was funny that he would give them 7 days to find help before he would subjugate them and gash out all of their eyeballs. Oop, let me see. Let me look at the comments. Are you guys talking? Oh. Okay. Okay, there we go. That didn't work. I tried to connect the chat, but it wanted me to sign into a different account. Everyone is Hello, Adam. I keep turning my other mic on. So then Nahash the Ammonite went up and besieged Jabesh Gilead. make a treaty with us, and we will serve you. Thank you, young God. But Nahash the Ammonite, I guess, is there anything significant about being an Ammonite? I'll make a treaty with you that I gouge out all of your right eyes. All the right side is always the good side, I guess. Now they'll all be left-eyed people. Left Eye. That was the name of that rapper on TLC. Left Eye. Which seems like a funny connection. Nahesh means serpent. So Nahesh the serpent said to them, "Thou will gouge out all of your right eyes." I guess we could ring. I can't control his screen, but I guess I could look up the rest of this section because he is using which version? He's using English Standard Version. So I'll just read on my phone the rest of it. And this is the wrong chapter. Okay. But Nahash the Ammonite 4. Give us 7 days respite that we may send messengers. When the messengers came to Gibeah of Saul, they reported the matter in the ears of the people, and all the people wept aloud. Now, behold, Saul was coming from the field behind the oxen. And Saul said, "What is wrong with the people that they are weeping?" So they told him the news of the men of Jabesh, and the Spirit of God rushed upon Saul when he heard these words, and his anger was greatly kindled. He took a yoke of oxen, and there you are.
I am sorry. And then, okay, now people let the cat out of the bag. Don't worry, you're doing a good job, so I'm going to trust that. So this is the bit, and you'll notice it even in the way that we described it. Nahash means serpent, right? Nahash means snake, hence echoes of Genesis. That's right. All of these people are getting into this. So we're going to go from the beginning and continue through. Sorry about having to be absent for a moment. Cassandra, look, you ran your own Bible study. You did such a good job. So this time I'll make Sandy read it. Sandy, can you read this okay? Or is that a no-go?
Yeah. No, I can see that.
But I'm going to ask you something, Sandy. Don't say Nahash, say snake. Whenever you see the name Nahash, say snake. Can you do that?
I missed this while I was on my phone call.
Nahash means snake in Hebrew.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. So read it saying snake. Go ahead.
Okay. Then Snake the Ammonite went up and besieged Jabesh Gilead, and the men of Jabesh said to Snake, "Make a treaty with us, and we will serve you." But Snake the Ammonite said to them, "On this condition I will make a treaty with you, that I gouge out all your right eyes, and thus bring disgrace on all Israel." The elders of Jabesh said to him, "Give us 7 days respite, that we may send messengers through all the territory of Israel. Then, if there is no one to save us, we will give ourselves up to you." When the messengers came to Gibeah of Saul, they reported the matter in the ears of the people, and all the people wept aloud.
That's great. Okay, so let's look at this now, realizing that it has snake in it. It's the same word for snake, which is used in Genesis, the Nahash. Find some other parallels with the beginning of Genesis. Does anything jump out to you guys? Some of it you got to wiggle a little bit. Both are silent, are muted at least.
I'm rereading it for a minute.
Okay. Yeah, Caspian, great job. 7 days. So there's a callback to the early Genesis story. I think the gouging out of the eyes, and that the snake has this role related to the eyes, right? The eating of the fruit will open your eyes. But in this situation, so the snake related to the eyes, which I think there's something there. And this term, to bring disgrace, unless I'm mistaken, is the same root as having shame. So he's going to bring shame on Israel related to the eyes, and this is the relationship that people get into with the snake. And for some people, I would agree, the partaking of the tree of knowledge of good and evil actually gives them a false seeing. So it is like a taking out of one of their eyes, as opposed to actually being able to fully see it. Does that seem too far for you?
I was gonna say it's always the right, like the right eye, the right hand. That is the most important.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I don't know why specifically the right eye. That's a good question. How is this fair play? From what I understand, there's a lot of things that if you only have one eye, your depth perception is completely off. So it also makes it so that you'd be no good in battle. There were some traditions where they just like cut off certain fingers of prisoners because then you couldn't draw a bow, or even quite famously, what's his name? I said famously, and then Adonai Bezek gets his thumbs cut off, right? That was like the humiliation of him, to live like a dog.
Thumb and big toe.
Yeah, but and the big toe, that's right. The opening of eyes in Genesis has echoes of waking up from a dream. It seems that losing one eye would affect the inner sight. Yeah, so it's these notions of perception, even the idea your eyes will be open and you'll be able to see good and evil, right? Like the two things. So you're getting rid of one eye. Yeah, so that's all in there. And then the narrative continues. So let's continue with the narrative. Unless do you have any? Yeah. Sorry, what was that, Sandy?
Oh no, I'm reading the comments. I love what they're sharing.
Yeah. Left side is associated with uncleanliness. It's a very good point. Because of your butt, not your butt in particular, everyone's butt. Let's be generous. Okay. Cassandra, would you continue reading, please?
Now behold, Saul was coming from the field behind the oxen, and Saul said, "What is wrong with the people that they are weeping?" So they told him the news of the men of Jabesh. And the Spirit of God rushed upon Saul when he heard these words, and his anger was greatly kindled. He took a yoke of oxen and cut them in pieces and sent them throughout all the territory of Israel by the hand of the messenger, saying, "Whoever does not come out after Saul and Samuel, so shall it be done to his oxen." Then the dread of the Lord fell upon the people, and they came out as one man.
Perfect. Okay, let's pause 1 second. So these seem to be two callbacks to Judges. So the Spirit of God rushed upon Saul, right? So you have things like, you have like the Spirit of God rushing upon Samson, right? Specifically empowering him for this ability. We had these other things that God making him king is the Spirit of God rushing upon him, right? That he becomes a new man, that he has a new heart, all this imagery, right? So this is what's making him able to do it. And this is another thing that I think is a callback to Judges, is the ending of Judges, the concubine cut up into pieces. It does not say 12 pieces here, but he took a yoke of oxen and cut them into pieces. Like that to me is an image related to the concubine in pieces, and that he shows that to everyone, because I was saying in Judges, the dismembered concubine was to show the people dismembered, disconnected from each other. And that I was saying that these were bookends. Adonai Bezek at the beginning, who gets dismembered, loses the thumbs and the big toes. And then at the end of Judges, the dismembering of the concubine, showing her in pieces. This is what's become of us. And Saul is actually saying he's supposed to be this unifying figure. Bringing the pieces back together is his role. And so he's calling back to this. And if that connection wasn't strong enough, the next verse is going to take place at Bezek. They gather in the place where Judges begins with the story of dismembering. That's when they come out as one man. It's so important, this line, that they came out as one man, because it's fragmentation. Now they're coming back together. Yeah. Okay. I wonder if the Hebrew word for messenger here is malach, which elsewhere means angel. So Caspian, this is the thing, is that malach does not mean angel. Angel means messenger. So it's the Greek word for messenger that is just not translated as messenger. Sometimes it's a heavenly messenger. Sometimes it's an earthly messenger, and we have to figure it out from context. So this would be the same thing, but whether or not that means what we think of as an angel, I don't know. Do you guys have anything to throw in there about my theory about dismemberment and all that business?
No, I mean, it reminded me of the same thing too. It's just, yeah, it's a little different. It's interesting. I don't know. Do you know more of the history then of what this is happening here? Because they're going to the Ammonite to ask to be subjugated, and I guess that they mean to be protected too. Otherwise, I'm not really sure why they're doing that. And then they want 7 days to get help.
Right. Yeah, it's a fascinating story, because basically, especially in ancient times, people would come in and they'll be like, we can wipe everyone out, we can plunder you, we can do something to you, or you just pay us a fee and we'll leave and we'll come back. Right? It could be a hostile takeover, or it can just be a mugging. What is your preference?
Right. And another thing to Judges that I just thought of is because he says, whoever does not follow Saul and Samuel. It almost made me think of I forget his name, the one who was relying on Deborah a lot to the point that he lost his
Sisera. Yeah.
Yes. It almost reminded me of that, because he's kind of leaning on the prophet maybe a little too much.
Sorry. Sisera is the bad guy in that. Barack Obama is the guy.
Yes.
Barak sometimes translates Barack. Yeah. Yeah. The two of us. Yeah. Combining the powers that's interesting too, because Samuel and Saul will have a falling out soon. So for him to say you're following me and Samuel in the future, that will not be the case. Yeah.
Right. And he kind of loses, well, I don't know, not glory, but I just thought about that because, because Barak didn't want to go out by himself. He wanted Deborah there. His glory was going to be taken away from him.
Yeah. Yeah. If you go with me, then I will go. Yeah, it's part of how he says it. I don't know if there's anything I want to add to that. I think that's all really good noticing. Good stuff. Sandy, is there anything you'd like to add? Even if it's just random thoughts?
I'm very good at random thoughts, but no, I'm not at the moment.
Yeah. It is interesting as well, because God is operating through Saul's anger. But right now it is righteous anger. So let's continue from verse 8, shall we? Sandy, give us a read.
When he mustered them at Bezek, the people of Israel were 300,000. and the men of Judah 30,000. And they came to the messengers who had come. Thus shall you say to the men of Jabesh Gilead, tomorrow, by the time the sun is hot, you shall have salvation. When the messengers came and told the men of Jabesh, they were glad. Therefore the men of Jabesh said, tomorrow we will give ourselves up to you, and you may do to us whatever seems good to you. And the next day Saul put the people in 3 companies, and they came into the midst of the camp in the morning watch, and struck down the Ammonites until the heat of the day. And those who survived were scattered, so that no 2 of them were left together.
That's great. Great little reading. Okay, this might be too far, and I know it is not the interpretation of some of the Jewish folks which are in here. I think that the Ammonite reference is connected to the snake reference, because I think we're talking about the Ammonites are one of the giant clans. It's one of the groups of people that are supposed to be wiped out utterly. And in some of my reading, which you guys know if you were there for our conversations about Gilgamesh, I do take the perspective that these are hybrids with some kind of demonic influence. So that this is, to some extent, a retelling of Genesis 3, where this is the seed of the woman, being Saul, crushing the descendant of the serpent. So, like, quite literally, the Ammonites would have been serpent seed. But then if that wasn't clear enough, it is literally the king's name is Snake. So Snake is crushed by Saul. So it is this image of the Messiah rising up is directly connected in the text to the crushing of the snake. These, to me, it's very, very clear that this is one of the roles of the serpent, of the Messiah. The Messiah is undoing the curse and is fighting the snake. So that's related to taking away shame. That's related to not messing with people's sight. Yeah, that's all there.
That's interesting.
Thanks, Caspian. What was about to say? Someone was about to say something.
What was Saul's name meaning again?
Oh, I can't remember. It's Shaul.
Saul.
What does the name mean? Prayed for.
Okay, yeah. Prayed for.
Is that right? Yeah, asked for, borrowed. Oh, that's even worse. Because the people demand a king, right?
Right.
So he's not, he's the one that they demanded. But we will also see this, by the way. So this is when Saul is looked entirely in a positive manner. And David, when he does his first kindly action, is also a serpent crusher. There's also bits of the snake in one of his stories, but we'll get there. Patience, okay, guys? But for right now, we can see this image. The king, the Messiah, is the serpent crusher. That's part of his image. It's not just a Christian invention. I would say that you could still bring that into the Jewish ideas of Messiah without a doubt. I'm just making it a little bit more explicit by taking the perspective that the Nephilim, these sons of God, are in fact some kind of supernatural entity. Yeah, we will get there. Saul was a populist who was too attuned to the will of the common folks. Absolutely, Caspian. That is where the text will go. Right now, he's good, though. Right now, it's God's desire and Saul's desire happen to be the same. So that's good. Sandy, finish us off.
Then the people said to Samuel, "Who is it that said, 'Shall Saul reign over us?' Bring the men that we may put them to death." But Saul said, "Not a man shall be put to death this day, for today the Lord has worked salvation in Israel." Then Samuel said to the people, "Come, let us go to Gilgal, and there renew the kingdom." So all the people went to Gilgal, and they made Saul king before the Lord in Gilgal. There they sacrificed peace offerings before the Lord, and there Saul and all the men of Israel rejoiced greatly.
So they redo his ceremony. Right? Because now he's actually a king.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Talk more about that. What do you mean? You did a great job noticing, by the way. Some people, especially when you read it chapter by chapter, they forget some of these details.
Oh, yeah. Well, because, I mean, the first time he hid and they had to drag him out to be king. And then, what was it? His companions or something. Some people didn't like him for king. So they didn't give him gifts. So he was disrespected from the very beginning. They have no faith in him. But now he actually did something. So now he's king because he saved them. He did something real. And now they want to kill the guys who disrespected him before.
Look at that, Cassandra. You don't even need me here. You do bang up job. Bang up job. Yeah. You did miss one thing, which is that even that one is his second coronation, right? First, it's just him when he's looking for them asses, right? When he's the one who will get.
Yeah, I forgot about
right?
that.
He's looking for the she donkeys, and God tells him this is the man. There's a whole thing. God says it's this man. He has the experience. Then next chapter is the public one, but there's still people that reject him. And now this is the third time he is made king, right? It's one of the jokes rule of three, but also this idea of like it's perfectly set. This is not a mistake. And I think, was it Yosef? I think it was Yosef who very long time ago said the man needs to be both chosen by God and the people, right? And so instead of killing these people, this I find so interesting. Saul doesn't say anyone who was against me, they're done now. Kill everyone who was against me. Instead, he proves himself and lets those people live. Lets those people be won over and say, yes, absolutely. Third time's the charm. Thank you, Don.
Yeah. This is his kingly phase.
Yeah. But he's fully come into it at this point.
Yeah, because it made me think too at the beginning of David's reign, because it has been a while, when some guy on the side of the road is just hurling insults on him and telling him all the wrong things he did. So one of his friends was going to kill him, and David said no, because this is God's judgment on me. He's right. And it makes me think of that too. Something about that, like being able to bear your critics or something like that. I don't know.
Right. Yes. Man, okay. Cassandra, in preparation for this, I was doing prep for the entire book. And I was going to make this comparison when we got there, which will be in like a year or whatever, however long it takes us to get there. But no, that's an excellent connection, that you can see the king is able to bear some kind of lack of loyalty, the bearing the jester, as sometimes it's laid out. This time he earned it. Yeah, so he is recognized by Samuel. He's recognized by the other power structure. He's recognized by fate itself through the throwing of dice, and now he's actually earned the position. So even if he wasn't just simply bestowed this position, we can see that he's worthy of the role. he does well.
Yeah, he's been put through the fire a bit. He's tested.
That's right. We also, I think, you get a sense because when someone is elected, they are not immediately, like in the US, there's going to be an election. It's not as soon as the election occurs, that person takes over. There's still a transition of power. And you could see the appointed king multiple times, because that will happen with David as well, as these stages of the transference of power. Another bit that's near the top, where was it? I have forgotten what I was going to say. Sandy, can you say something while I try to figure out what I was going to say?
I'm still trying to figure out where you were going with some of what you said earlier, pointing out they're waiting for the Savior, because I mean that's very Jewish. You know, that you're in a story where God's anointed is going to go and save them. And we see that throughout so many places in the scripture.
Yeah, that's good.
But then I'm thinking about, so what prompted you, like what brought you to this being a replication of Genesis 3? I mean, besides the snake. I mean,
so snake is a big one. And then once I noticed snake, I noticed the use of disgrace, of shame. And then because there's shame and that, then I noticed, okay, there's an I bit as well. That seems significant. And then realizing that this chapter, to me, I think you can tell when it approves of Saul. And I think it approves of Saul in this chapter. So I'm like, okay, when he's good, he's doing this. And then it's the David and Goliath story. When we get to the David and Goliath story, it's also a retelling of that exact.
Is this typically read that way?
Oh, I don't know. I know I'm not the only one to bring out these comparisons, because like everyone in the chat was saying, if you know what Nahash means, you just go, yeah, you just didn't translate his name. Because so with a word play on a name, it demands that you either translate the name or you lose the pun. Yeah, Caspian is saying Heiser would read it that way. Yeah.
Okay, because I realize like Jacob talks a lot about how many puns there are in the scriptures.
Yeah.
How often we're called to pay attention to something because there's a pun. But when I think back over typical sermons, I'm like, no, did it just go right over people's head? Or like, I mean, surely it shouldn't be missed. That, you know, that there's a repetition of patterns and things being seen.
I still think people get the repetition of the patterns. It's just how explicit those patterns are. That's a way of thinking about it. And I think if you were reading it just in English, you might get some sense for it, but it may not be as explicit. So every level, or even Cassandra being able to connect it to other passages, that too, it becomes more explicit if you know the exact wording, right? And know how else it's used. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
So I think that's something I appreciate about Christian arts, where they put a lot of physical symbols that they repeat in places too. And that really helps draw the connections out, even if you don't know all the specifics about the puns in the language. So I don't know how this would be depicted, but I know in some art pieces, icons and stuff, sometimes they make some of these things more explicit visually.
Right, how they do that.
Well, and I guess that's what grabbed me, because it's a Jewish story. It is the story of the people of Israel, and there's so much when you look at things that people do point to. There's so much pointing at things by Christians to say, see, can you not see this? And I've never heard that pointed to, not once.
Okay. Well, in
So-
this, like, look, okay, so related to what Cassandra was saying before, this is a depiction of Cain and Abel. I really like the artwork of a guy named Gustav Dorr, which I will definitely show you when we get to David and Goliath, because his image of David and Goliath is just my absolute favorite. But this is Cain and Abel. And when you're looking at all the details he includes this detail over here, where there's a snake next to Cain and Abel. So to me, in his artwork, he's making it explicit that what Cain is doing is he's giving in to the serpent. He's giving in to the temptation, and that temptation is related to the serpent. So it's, yeah.
Okay, so I have a terrible question then.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think, or to what degree do you think, that Christianity takes away from the major stories that should be being watched then in the scriptures? Like, when I look at some of the linguistic changes and the things that have happened, even the fact that you can look at that and say, "Oh, look, this artist, he notices the snake." Right. I feel like sometimes if you sit in church and you hear a sermon, instead of actually listening to some of the things that I've been privileged to listen to, hanging out in the Jewish streams, there's so much missed. There's just so much missed.
You're not wrong. Yeah. Yeah, it's an just spoilers, I am a Christian, Sandy. And so I obviously have some kind of favorable approach to a lot of this, but my love of the original material means that, like, I want to be tethered. I want to be kept within the realms of the text and not drifting so far away from it that I'm making up my own thing.
Well, and see, that's something that bothers me, and maybe I just had the weirdest thought. Maybe in part it bothers me because of having an autistic child, because when you live in the context of a deaf autistic son, and you have conversations around the meaning of things, and very often in either zone, the deaf or the autistic, and living in a space where I have to kind of hold one in each hand and say, neither one nor the other are the story of my life and my son's life and existence. I live somewhere in between them. And I'm trying to respect both, but both of them ask the same question over and over and over. But are you seeing this only in a medical context? Do you only see me in terms of how doctors write up some kind of, diagnosis of my life? Are you only pointing at, what shows up there? And I'm asking you these questions, and I'm poking at the answers, and I'm thinking, yeah, are you writing this? Like, are we reading the story backwards? Because we're writing it backwards, saying, well, so your child is autistic. Then obviously all of these things that we believe scream, this is autism as we see it, must be true about your child. And I'm like, well, no, that's not. And then I go to the deaf community and they're like, so, but do you see him only through the medical lens, or do you
Right. Well, and I do think this is
like,
very
no, I
important.
can't.
I think this is beautiful what you're bringing up, Sandy, because I think one of the parts of having conversations with people that differ is being able to have conversations with how these things are connected with each other. I love when Yosef or when Chezi is able to join, or Yoav or Jacob, because they can bring forward a different perspective. I even really enjoy when someone who really knows the text and someone who doesn't know the text at all is there as well. Because sometimes the person who doesn't know the text at all is able to notice something that immediately lifts forward that everyone else has just pushed past, because you only notice it the first time you're through. And so I don't see that at all because it's not my first time through. But other people will notice it and bring it up. And I'm just like, it's the most obvious thing. I have no idea how I never mentioned it before. So keeping those things within conversation, because that's one of the most difficult part about being medicalized is you get simplified and pushed through. Right. And so I don't want to do a conversation about symbolism that is a dismissal and pushing through, oversimplifying. I don't want to do that. I think it adds complexity, not that it oversimplifies what's happening in the story. Because all this other stuff, it's a pretty cool story with cool threats and everything too. Before I forget, I want to share the image that I will show y'all when we do David and Goliath. Ready? Boom. Have you guys seen that, David and Goliath?
No, I have not. This is an engraving?
Yeah, it's an engraving that Dor would make engravings that then could be reproduced like a ton of times. So like, look at how tiny David is in comparison to that head. I love how giant, and like just holding the head up. It's great. Really great. Cassandra, did you want to add anything to that little conversation we were having?
No.
Wonderful. Sandy, would it be all right if we continued on?
Sure. Are you time-wise? Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
I have a 3:00 online appointment, but other than that, I'm great.
That's all right. And I just wanted to make sure that you felt, I don't want to get too off track, but I'm glad that you brought up that idea and the way that people get dismissed, and that is lined up with biblical interpretation. It's just this. We just move on. Okay. Cassandra, how about you give us a read now?
And Samuel said to all Israel, behold, I have obeyed your voice in all that you have said to me, and have made a king over you. And now behold, the king walks before you, and I am old and gray, and behold, my sons are with you. I have walked before you from my youth until this day. Here I am. Testify against me before the Lord and before his anointed. Whose ox have I taken? Or whose donkey have I taken? Or whom have I defrauded? Whom have I oppressed? Or from whose hand have I taken a bribe to blind my eyes with it? Testify against me, and I will restore it to you. And they said, you have not defrauded us, or oppressed us, or taken anything from any man's hand. And he said to them, the Lord is witness against you, and his anointed is witness this day that you have not found anything in my hand. And they said, he is witness.
Yeah, great. Good job. Okay, so this is related to what a good judge is from Deuteronomy. It is. I find it a little bit strange because his sons are mentioned. My sons are with you, and we know his sons are shysters. They're not the best of dudes. I remember the thing I wanted to say about the last chapter, which is the last chapter made sure to say that Judah was included in the tribes that went up with Saul, because there will be a division between Judah, Benjamin, and the rest of the tribes. And so it will go out of its way to mention when they are aligned, when they're against each other, because this is going to be a split that will divide the nation north and south, between Israel and Judah.
Yeah, that's also an interesting way to interpret the text too, is that when they're writing it, they already have their own lens that they're looking back on their own history through.
Yeah, is that they know when they write it that they're, I said this during Judges, is I think part of the function of Judges is how did we get here? It may not have been, some people go so far as to say it's all written in the exilic period, like when they're exiled. I wouldn't go that far, but I think that it's written with a prophetic hand that knows that exile is on the horizon, that they know that that's where these things are leading, and they want people to know how we got here.
Transitory space, kind of.
Yeah, it's like, it's really important that we record these stories so that people know where it all went wrong. Yeah. Okay. So he's specifying that he's not defrauded, that he's a good guy. All seems connected to the Deuteronomy image. The Lord is witness against you, and his anointed is witness this day. So he's bringing in Saul into that conversation, the king into that conversation. Hi, Mikhail. Join us. Let us continue on, shall we? Which person that has sand in their names want to go?
What?
Oh, he's on vacation.
Congratulations, Michael. So glad for you. It's
Happy
awesome.
anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. Wow. That's
So
nice.
good.
Reading from 6, or where were we?
Yes. Go ahead, Sandy.
And Samuel said to the people, "The Lord is witness, who appointed Moses and Aaron and brought your fathers up from the land of Egypt. Now therefore stand still, that I may plead with you before the Lord concerning all the righteous deeds of the Lord that he performed for you and for your fathers. When Jacob went into Egypt and the Egyptians oppressed them, then your fathers cried out to the Lord, and the Lord sent Moses and Aaron, who brought your fathers out of Egypt and made them dwell in this place. But they forgot the Lord their God, and he sold them into the hand of Sisera, commander of the army of Hazor, and into the hand of the Philistines, and into the hand of the king of Moab. And they fought against them. And they cried out to the Lord and said, "We have sinned, because we have forsaken the Lord, and have served the Baals and the Ashtaroth. But now deliver us out of the hand of our enemies, that we may serve you."
Okay, pause a second. So I think it's very, very interesting if you're trying to pick what are the most important elements of the book of Judges. And what was interesting is that I knew where this was going because I've been studying this week. But Cassandra, you brought up the story of Sisera separately. Like that there's an element of it which is one of the central stories of Judges. We can see it even that there's the Song of Deborah. We can see that one of the theories is essentially you have the story preserved through the song, and then the narrative itself is is newer than the song. The song is very, very ancient, and the narrative is a little bit newer. That's one of the theories. And to me, it's because it's one of the major stories. So it jumps from Egypt to this story, right? So I think these are signs that people are catching things. So good stuff. Let's continue, shall we? Go ahead, Sandy.
And the Lord sent Jerubbaal and Barak and Jephthah and Samuel, and delivered you out of the hand of your enemies on every side, and you lived in safety. And when you saw that Nahash, snake, the king of the Ammonites, came against you, you said to me, no, but a king shall reign over us, when the Lord your God was your king. And now behold the king whom you have chosen, for whom you have asked. Behold, the Lord has set a king over you.
Okay, pause right there. That's great. What's the problem with the chronology here? So we might have to squish stories together. Is in the text, it tells the story separately of them asking for a king and the story of Nahash. They seem like different stories, but here they're kind of mushed together. So these things may have been happening at the same time. It's difficult. Like there's questions that people have. When does Saul meet David? Because he meets him twice, where he has never met this man before and meets him for the first time. It happens twice. And it's the same thing over here. Is there a way of combining these, or are they separate stories? Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I'm going to admit no. I haven't thought of it. Oh, the shame. My ex used to talk about kings and judges and chronicles constantly. He would know.
Let me do a quick check on something Hebrew related. Okay, in verse thing, for this day, today is work, blah, blah. No, where is it? Should be right there. Oh, no, I need to go forward. Sorry, guys, give me 1 second. I just want to check something because it says the man who you asked for let me just check the Hebrew to see if that asked is the same word. If it's Saul's name when it says for a king you asked. Just bring it up.
Adam was saying, it's strange because king has image of many wives like a covenant, which is related to prophethood, while priest has many sons. But Samuel and Saul seem to mix these traits. What do you mean by that, Adam?
I wonder. No, it's not related. It's not the.
Sisera is not a Semitic name.
You have desired. Yeah, Saul's name is you have desired is Shaul Tem. Shaul Tem. So you can see Shaul's name, Saul, is in that name, is in the asked for. So that is definitely a Hebrew pun right there. The asking for. So I don't know if Adam is getting at it. There is a lot of conversations as to what extent roles are allowed to be blended. To what extent you could have because he's a priest and a prophet at the same time. There are multiple kings that do prophet-ish things, and David specifically does priest things a couple of times. He eats the showbread, which is only intended for the priests. So there's a couple of stories that some people will say, okay, to what extent is there a blending of the roles, and to what extent are the roles supposed to become one thing, or to what extent are they supposed to stay different things? Someone like Jacob Federecci would say the roles are different and needs to be different. A lot of Christians would say that the roles are going to find a point where they will come together in Jesus of Nazareth.
That's interesting because Neil did like some kind of stream, I think, on the Friday Nameless channel that was talking about this kind of. He had like a little slideshow. I don't know if you saw that, but he was talking about like the king, the prophet, the priesthood, and how the like intersecting circles, I guess, or nested circles. And
okay, I did not see that, but I think yeah, I get what you're saying. Keep going. That's good.
I was just gonna say, and then he had different ones because he said, you know, they would have like a certain setup, but then they morph. So like the circle king started overlapping and then moving horizontally, and you have all of these other things kind of misforming around it too, and now they're overlapping in ways that probably aren't very good. They're mixing,
and they're all messiahed as well. Like you're anointed within those roles. And there's even a bit where like the high priest wears a crown, right? That's very clearly a kingly image. The first priest we meet is Melchizedek, right? Where he's king and priest of this area. Yeah.
Can I read the lines above the top there? Above the Ashtoreth?
Sure. How far up do you want me?
Well, so it's okay. That's what I was wanting to check. So I don't get this because it says that this is all starting there in that spot about how God's people had forgotten about him.
Yeah.
So he's doing all these things that they'll be in need and maybe remember him.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of, because I mean, like they're admitting here in the history of this, they're saying, you know, like they forgot the Lord their God, and he sold them into the hand of Sisera, commander of the army of Zor. Not even saying, you know, like he hasn't given them over to Pharaoh in this story. He hasn't given them over to a different king when they forget their king, who is God. You know, like he gives them to somebody who's like the commander of an army. Right. And then he gives them to the Philistines, and then he gives them to, but then he does give them to the king of Moab.
Right. But it is all supposed to be echoes of the idea of Pharaoh, where even when the kings become disobedient, they will be described in Pharaoh-like language.
Yeah, but it's supposed to turn them back to God,
yes.
You know, to remember
yes.
who is their king.
Yes. Yeah, the purpose, like the metaphor that I'll use oftentimes is when trying to explain the plagues is chemotherapy and radiation. Chemotherapy is poison. Radiation is fire. These are things that we do to wound someone. But in a proper context is medicine. It will kill the bad and it will preserve the good.
Okay, and so in the previous chapter, you're pointing us to the snake. And eventually here, they're talking again about how the snake is brought against them.
I don't know who Dominic is. You guys ever met Dominic? Someone almost joined named Dominic.
No. Okay. I don't
see
but so then you're likening this back to Genesis 3.
Mm-hmm.
And in Genesis 3, the same thing happens. In a sense that, I mean, they should be looking to God.
Yeah.
And even in Genesis 3, when they fall, he's telling them that
Well, and I would even tie it with Cain and Abel, where it's that idea of you are supposed to rule over these evil desires, right? But if you don't, it rules over you, right? You are destroying the tyrants, and if you're not, you are conceding to them or you're becoming one. These are the problems which people have. So they're going to go back to Babel. They're going to go back to the snake. They're going to go back to these images of putting themselves into slavery, right? The language of making bricks in Egypt, and that's how Babel is made. Other people have made those connections as well, and that the Tower of Babel was almost certainly a pyramid.
So are they asking for a king because of the promise that one of the offspring of Adam and Eve will crush the serpent's head? Like are they understanding or misunderstanding?
It's set up as though it's a bad ask. It seems like, especially because David is the real chosen one by God, it seems like God is just about to give them a king when they demand it on their own terms. And so it's the king is not the problem. It's the demanding it on their own terms.
Which is again back to Genesis 3. Because I've heard that come up in a lot of discussions of, was God going to actually tell them that they couldn't eat from the tree, or was their timing bad? Was it a bad ask?
Yeah.
Or so we're there.
Yeah. Is God coming into the garden to give them of the tree, but now they've taken it for themselves? It's like brutal image, but like the difference between, do I even want to get into this? Something like sexual assault is identical actions could be taken in a consensual manner that are loving versus it being like the most horrible thing imaginable. And so it's not the action in and of itself, it's the context of relationship, whether or not a thing is shared or taken.
Yeah, and I've skirted the edge of this question a couple of times in conversations other places. Myself in some sharing of personal history, which brings up the context that people keep asking over in Bridges of Meaning. But what is marriage anyway, and what is its purpose?
Right.
And I've only been asking that for the last 40 or so years. And this points right to that. Do you really want to get into this? Because it matters so much.
Yeah.
The context is so important.
Right. And that's why you'll get some people that are, because God speaks negatively of kingship in some places, they will say there was never a good intention of kingship, instead of God has a good intention for kingship. It's just they seized it for themselves. Right. So the waiting for the right time and the right context seems to be something within this text. Cassandra, do you have any thoughts to throw in about this stuff?
I don't know. I was thinking when you said earlier about them wanting, like, sometimes missing Egypt and stuff like that. I think about that a lot. There's something where, like, people kind of would almost rather be subjugated in certain ways because they don't have, I guess maybe, I don't know if it's a pressure or responsibility, or also it's just a way to belong. Like, even if you're part of a bad hierarchy, you have a place in there. And even with, bad relationships and marriages, my own grandma stayed in one for a very long time because there wasn't really another place for her. And so I don't know. I was thinking about that because they're always talking about God saved you from Egypt, but then there's always this part of them that's longing for those days, longing for subjugation.
And there's people that they will be in an abusive relationship, and then they'll get into a relationship which isn't, and then they will almost demand that violence become part of the way that things are communicated. It's like, this is how I understand things to be. And so even though I'm given this other opportunity to ask for something more, this is what I understand.
Well, and the going back and taking the past too, that comes up a lot in terms of some of the meaning things we're discussing. And I mean, I've had some difficult conversations over the years with people, where you bring something up in a negative context and something is shared. Like, I've had conversations with my sister around some of the marriage question, where in one particular discussion, she talked about friends who did not consummate their marriage for over 2 weeks because the context was important.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, like that's like a stab in terms of some of what we were actually discussing. Or like you said, you find somebody who's been in one relationship that was really unhealthy, and then you get into another relationship that's extremely healthy. You can't undo. You'll have to trim that later. Cut it out.
I don't know how to.
Jake,
I had my hand over the remove thing for quite a bit. And that one, man, that one even had a picture of Yoav on it.
Oh, no. So you have to do what Jacob or somebody always does, which says he'll ask people to respond directly in chat, or do something to indicate, like you've got to do confirmation test, because name alone is not. No.
Yeah. Well, one had picture as well. I just had my hand over it like, okay, remove. But then it was two people at once.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but that'll need to be trimmed.
Yeah, we'll try to adjust that. Okay.
But there again, looking at things where if you're looking at something and you're saying there's a negative context and a positive context.
Right.
Simply undoing the negative context doesn't, like, here, they can't do, what do they gain by if you were to say, we're going to just not share this portion of the history? What do you gain by, like, that's not the solution. Like, they bought, like, the wisdom is here. We're seeing that the stories that have been shared of everything that they did wrong, because it's also vitally important to the context of where they move forward with God. Yeah. When God actually provides them the king that he intended. It's rough. It's a rough go.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Yeah. Yoav is a very good dude. Actual Yoav is a very good dude. Someone was mocking his account, was mimicking his account in order to try to, I don't know, play a little bit of a, okay.
So. You might want to just, okay. I am not on my wrench account. Somebody who has a wrench can deal with some of that. I got to figure out how to go back to.
Easier to time out.
No, I don't. Yeah. What I might have to do is, thanks.
Okay, hopefully that will clean some stuff up.
Yeah, like Jacob gives a ton of people wrenches also to deal with things quickly, but I'm showing under my other account.
That's fine. Don't worry about it, Sandy.
So I don't have a wrench under that one.
Yeah. Okay, so I think I'd like to move on with the text a little bit. Man, what's the deal, Cassandra? This is the Bible study of interruptions.
I mean, you did leave for like 3 minutes in the beginning. I was
Yeah.
by myself.
That's our actual friend Yoav. Hello, Yoav.
Hey,
Hello.
Yoav.
Hello.
Did you have anything you'd like to add regarding the Bible stuff? This is actually Yoav, as opposed to. I
Yeah,
think
this is
everyone
the-
understands how the faking works.
This is
Yeah.
the actual me. I just wanted to take the opportunity that I'm briefly on stage to just repeat a comment that I made in text.
Yes. Yes.
Because you have made a lot of you elaborated a lot about the name of Nahash. So I'm
Yes.
taking the privilege to elaborate a little bit on the name of Sisra.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
point
Do it.
is that there is no meaning to the word Sisra. It's not a Semitic name, and he's not the king. He's a professional. He was brought on specially for the task, and the theory is that he was famous before the incident. He was a famous general recruited for the purpose, and he was more famous than the king of Hatzor. So that's the comment I would like to make.
What do you think the significance of that is?
I don't know what the theological significance of it is, but it's in the contents of the battle of the early kings against the neighboring powers, and there were the powers on the seaside. Those are the people of the sea, and there were the Philistines and several and many others. And there are the powers to the east from the desert, and the Ammonites were coming from where now is Jordan. This is apart from being a Jew and sort of objecting to your theory about the snake, which I ought to by
I think it could still have I think it could still have a Jewish interpretation that doesn't require Christianity.
I would caution this interpretation for the reason that it is a Semitic name, and the descendants of the Ammonites are still living there in the city that is called Rabat Ammon. And I will go easy on comparing them to non-human beings. I will sort of be careful about that. That's the comment.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point.
Okay.
I don't, Yoav, can you help me with just understanding this just a little bit further? Because as best I understand, the Ammonites are described as these giant clans, but the Philistines are not. Like there seems to be some kind of a distinction, and this is what I would say. Like, it seems to me like Goliath is one of these kind of characters, but it's not all the Philistines are of the giants or anything like that.
Well, as I said, there were order of magnitude 7 of them, different tribes of the sea people.
Right.
Philistines were the largest tribe, and they settled by locality from. The story is that they took upon themselves together to fight and conquer Egypt, and they failed.
Yes.
So they were rejected from Egypt, and they settled on the shore by order, by their nationality. And the Philistines go the south of the south of the shore of Israel. Other sea people go the northern part. So when you get to the northern Israel, like port cities like Dor, you get different people altogether that might have come from, if the Philistine came from Greece or from Crete, then other people might have come as far as Sicily or Sardinia.
Right.
So there were all sorts of people around. It was
Right.
it was a global society.
Yeah.
And Sisera was part of it. He was a professional in a global society.
Yeah. And I don't know how anyone feels about this. My interpretation is that the people who have to be wiped out are only the people who have these names who are also of the giant clans.
As far as I know, the only people that have to be wiped out is Amalek.
Right.
That's what I remember now. Amalek, there was a people historically, and southern west of Turkey.
Right.
They were called by the neighbors the Luka people. They were called the Luka people because they never had a king, they never had a kingdom. And if you translate the Luka people to Hebrew, you'll get Amalek. So it might mean that those Luka people are one of the sea people. And they didn't find their place on the shore. They had to wander around in the desert, never establishing a kingdom, never establishing a state. And therefore, you will never recognize them now.
Right.
You cannot identify who is belong to that people anymore because they got dispersed. So yes, they have to be wiped out, but you can never find them. You will never identify them.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for those comments. I think I want to finish up this chapter. So I see you sometimes nodding to someone off. So it seems like you might be having to go, which I understand. But yeah, let's continue on in the text. We're going to go in verse 14. Cassandra, will you read for us?
If you will fear the Lord and serve him and obey his voice and not rebel against the commandment of the Lord, and if both you and the king who reigns over you will follow the Lord your God, it will be well. But if you will not obey the voice of the Lord, but rebel against the commandment of the Lord, then the hand of the Lord will be against you and your king. Now therefore stand still and see this great thing that the Lord will do before your eyes. Is it not wheat harvest today? I will call upon the Lord that he may send thunder and rain, and you shall know and see that your wickedness is great, which you have done in the sight of the Lord in asking for yourselves a king. So Samuel called upon the Lord, and the Lord sent thunder and rain that day, and all the people greatly feared the Lord and Samuel.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like Elijah. It's a pretty cool connection. Keep going because we just have this little bit left. Actually, Sandy, I haven't asked you to read for a while, so I'll ask you to read now.
Okay, from 19.
Yes.
And all the people said to Samuel, "Pray for your servants to the Lord your God, that we may not die. For we have added to all our sins this evil, to ask for ourselves a king." And Samuel said to the people, "Do not be afraid. You have done all this evil. Yet do not turn aside from following the Lord, but serve the Lord with all your heart. And do not turn aside after empty things that cannot profit or deliver, for they are empty. For the Lord will not forsake his people, for his great name's sake, because it has pleased the Lord to make you a people for himself. Moreover, as for me, far be it from me that I should sin against the Lord by ceasing to pray for you. And I will instruct you in the good and the right way. Only fear the Lord and serve him faithfully with all your heart. For consider what great things he has done for you. But if you still do wickedly, you shall be swept away, both you and your king."
This is so beautiful, guys. Is that what they have asked for is wrong. And God still says, we are going, like, you still have an opportunity. It's still, if you still do what's right, it's still going to be okay. So it's to me, it's so beautiful. It's so simple. That God's not giving up on them. And it sounds to me like you can compare the way this sounds to the end of Deuteronomy and the end of Joshua, where God is basically bargaining with the people, or where the prophet Moses or Joshua is bargaining with the people saying, this is what God wants. You have to do what's right. If you don't do what's right, it's going to go bad for you. And the people say, no, we will do what's right. Yeah, it seemed it to me, it's a beautiful thing. Do you got? I don't know. Do you know what I'm talking about when I do that comparison? No. Yeah, check it out. So it would be the end of Deuteronomy or the end of Joshua, where there's a kind of a bargaining. Is this going to be our last chance? Will we ever have another opportunity? Will God just give up on us? And the image is no. No, he's not going to give up on us. You still have another chance. There's still an opportunity of repentance. Yeah.
Right. The big biblical theme.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, it's not a Faustian bargain. That's what Nina just said. Nina Kapunda.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so either, because it just is saying if you do what's right, it's not going to go bad. You still have a chance. I mean, man, I had this conversation with a friend because he married the wrong woman. And when he was dating her, I was like, you gotta call this. You gotta end this. And then he gets married. What's my advice to her? It's you got to figure out a way how to work this out. You have to, right? Like you made a mistake. It can still turn to good. You can't force it to turn to good, but you can still be obedient and good within this situation, even if you found yourself in a bad situation. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is one of the biggest themes throughout the whole text.
Yeah. I just love that they're being given this in reaction to something that is clearly a mistake. You did the wrong thing. You asked for the wrong thing. Here it is. You still have an opportunity to make good on it. Yeah.
Yeah. It almost seems too like at the end there, but if you still do wickedly, you shall be swept away, both you and your king. It's almost too like they also have responsibility for how well the kingship will do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting image too. There's so much in all this stuff because the king does gather them together like one man. So he does gather the lost pieces or the wild jackasses. He gathers them together. He does crush the snake. He is a thwarter of evil. It does seem really positive at the beginning. And in fact, in the Midrash, Saul is a really positive, is continually doing heroic and good things. So this is just going further to show how we have an opportunity and a choice. We still have to choose what's good. It's not a given. And when we're in a bad time, it also isn't a given. You can make things good even if it's a bad situation.
Right. It's almost more necessary.
Yeah. It's a great way of saying it. Okay, I'm going to trim this video to get rid of that bad thing that happened. Thank you guys so much for your for joining. I'll do a last round before I say goodbye. Cassandra, you got anything else to add?
No, I mean, despite everything, I think this is a pretty good study. I like the Book of Samuel. This has been fun.
That's good. That's good. Sandy, yourself, any last thoughts?
No. I do have a question for you when we end about of an identity question for you.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll do that in a second. Before we go, let me just say that we are right now in this circumstance. We are always in this circumstance. We have wound up multiple times in situations that we chose that are wrong, and God is giving us the opportunity to do right within them and to make the best out of it. No excuse to sin more because we sinned a little bit at the beginning. And there continues to be opportunities that if we have patience and endurance and discipline, that we can choose the right thing that God has for us, that we can do those things. So God, please empower us to be able to do that. Thank you, guys. Going to end the stream.